Hi everyone, this is Daniel,
And I'm June,
and we are
Korean.
American.
Hey Daniel,
Good morning, Jin.
morning. The season has finally come.
For what?
You're not bringing anymore? Is this like the first time in this season that you're bringing a hot beverage?
Second time.
It's the second time.
Yeah, I think one time my throat was feeling a little not great,
Okay,
but second time, yeah.
that doesn't count.
Okay.
So it's that cold.
It's just I felt like I wanted tea this morning.
Okay.
So, no, I'm still Orjuga. I would still get iced Americano.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't really get the orjuga thing.
Yeah.
Like when it's like freezing cold outside,
Yeah.
it's like minus 10 degrees Celsius.
Yeah.
I see people, if I go to like Starbucks and you see, like the beverages lined up for people to pick up, I still see a majority of them are
Iced Americano, yeah.
I don't get it.
My justification, okay, twofold.
Yeah.
One, I find cold drinks just refreshing. Like it's just 시원해.
Which is true.
Yeah, I find it refreshing.
Yeah.
I think I'm naturally on the warmer side, so I like to be cool. And then two, indoors is never that cold, and most of the time you're indoors. So I'm not like planning to consume that iced Americano outside in the
Yeah.
negative 10 degrees Celsius cold. I'm like, I'm just going to bring it to my, chair, desk, office location.
That's true.
Yeah.
But your body temperature, I think it goes down when you have an And with that body temperature, if you walk out, it's very painful.
Yeah.
To me personally, anyways.
No, I know. But I can understand the hot drink preference. It's cold outside. You want to
Yeah.
drink something warm. Like feels good.
Yeah.
But it's not 시원해, right?
Yeah. I love that contrast of when you're holding a hot drink and then you're walking in a very cold weather.
Yeah.
Like when you go to like these outdoor onsens and like when it's snowing outside
Yeah.
and your body's in warm water.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
The equivalent would be, I guess, hot tubbing after going skiing or something like that.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. A lot of people say you just hot tub and when you ski and snowboard, you're just dealing with that.
Yeah.
Looking forward to the après ski, to the hot tub after.
Yes.
It makes it worth it.
Anyways, how's your weekend?
Very uneventful.
Oh no.
It's okay. June. I like uneventful.
You should have eventful events just for the sake of having something to talk about every Monday.
June, if only. If you really want to know, we went to Costco.
Okay.
That's a huge deal. Costco in Korea is not relaxing at all. It's not calm.
Yeah.
Normally when my bi-weekly Costco trips in the US, they're like my refuge. Like
Yeah.
I love them.
Yeah.
Right? Just like, anyway. But in Korea, it is tense.
Because there are
Even-
too many people.
So many people. We basically did an open run, but we got there right as it was supposed to open. Still, it took us 15 minutes to get into the parking garage.
Okay.
And like every one of those 15 minutes was stressful because people are trying to like cut in. Like you got to protect your spot in the line.
Yeah.
So annoying. And then once you actually park, right, it's like there's just people everywhere. It's just chaos. And so yeah, and in Costco's in Korea, at least on the weekends or when it's crowded, you don't bring your cart to the things and then pick stuff up as you're going. You find a good parking spot for your cart out of the
and
way.
then you move.
And then you have to maneuver around the
I
warehouse,
see.
bring stuff back to your cart, and when you're done with the section, you move the cart to the next parking spot.
Because like maneuvering around with your cart is that much.
And it's so crowded.
I see.
Yeah. It's nuts.
What's your Costco cadence?
Oh, in the US, very regular, every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Here, it's whenever there's like an occasion. I'd say it's been averaging once every 2 months. Yeah.
Every 2 months. When do you go to Costco as opposed to like ordering from Coupang? Like what's the occasion?
It's a good question. When there's like an open weekend block, so what are we going to do that today? It's like,
Also, it's just recreational.
it's part something to do, like get out of the house. So we like to go to IKEA too. We've only been a couple times, but that's also like, should we just go to IKEA?
Yeah.
I think one, our kids like the food, and then
In IKEA or Costco?
both.
Both.
Yeah.
The Swedish meatballs?
Oh, the IKEA Korea food is pretty legit.
Oh, better than the one. Interesting.
I enjoyed it much more. I think for me too, I had I don't know what it is about Costco and specifically, I was going to say Asian Americans, but maybe just Asians, judged based on the Costco Korea locations too.
Yeah.
But whatever, I just have such good memories and associations with Costco
Yeah.
that I guess I want to transfer that onto my kids too. So we try to make it extra exciting, call it
Interesting.
Costco family trips and things like that. Yeah.
It's kind of like the commercialized theme park, if you will.
Yeah, I guess. Shop as you go. But our older two kids now, they're old enough where they have goals too. Not only coming up and helping us come up with the shopping list, but yeah, they're mainly responsible for two things while we're there. One, finding snacks for themselves. So
Oh.
letting us know what snacks they would like.
Yeah.
And then we can approve or not approve. And then two, they get samples not only for themselves, but for the family. So
Oh.
they're two younger siblings and
so
me
cute.
and my wife.
Yeah. When you first said they have golds, you said goals, right?
Yeah.
I thought you said golds as in like they're all like gold members.
Oh, cool. No, they do not have their separate membership yet. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. I haven't been to Costco ever since I went with you.
Oh.
What was I like
That was a long
2
time
years
ago.
ago? 1.5 years ago?
Feels like a year ago. Yeah.
Yeah, because like for a single family house, it's almost like water everywhere, but there's nothing to drink because
Yeah.
it's like they're all so good, but I can't
So
buy it
much,
because
yeah,
they're all in
yeah.
bulk. Yeah.
Agreed. Even when we just had a family, I guess, of four and our kids were younger, it wasn't necessarily it didn't make the most sense to go. We
Yeah.
still went because we love Costco.
Yeah.
But
I just remember like pulling out things from the aisle. I was like, oh, I like this. And then it comes with like 4 others.
how did that happen? Oh, that happened to me this last trip 2 days ago too.
Yeah.
Peanut butter.
Peanut butter.
First of all, it's like a gigantic jar.
Uh-huh.
And I was pulling it out. I thought it was just one.
Oh.
I was like, oh, this is a double jar.
Yeah.
But I was like, peanut butter doesn't go bad. This is fine.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of, do you know peanut butter and apples are kind of trending in Korea?
Oh.
Kind of randomly.
Yeah.
Because like I think it came from like this influencer person
Yeah.
who sort of introduced this kind of like very exotic thing.
Exotic. That's
Like
so
for
funny.
Koreans, it's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
a
yeah.
very weird combination,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because it's not like peanut butter to begin with. It's not like a staple in Korea, staple food.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But then like to mix it, like have it with apples, I think was very fun.
No, I could see that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that is a staple childhood snack in the US.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I saw, it's like ants on a log.
Ah, yeah. So celery, peanut butter, then raisins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I first saw people having that in the
Thought it
US,
was
I
a
thought it was
joke,
like
right?
so weird. I don't know. I personally don't really like peanut butter.
I was gonna say celery. If Koreans like apples and peanut butter,
Yeah.
wait till they try celery and peanut butter.
Oh, should we start the trend of ants on a log?
June or peanut butter and jelly. That's one of our kids' favorite food to eat.
Yeah.
It's
Do you get like the one that have the swirls in already, or do you?
June, that's gross.
You know what I'm talking about?
I've seen
though.
the pre-swirled peanut butter jelly jars. Yes,
Smuckers or something.
not a fan. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
I thought you were gonna ask chunky or smooth, creamy, but
I think we already went through that.
you're right. You're right. We'll cut that out. No, but June. Okay, actually, what prompted this trip?
Yes.
This is not a joke. I think our kids requested. Maybe Koreans will think this is crazy. Our kids wanted the dinosaur chicken nuggets for breakfast.
용가리.
There's a thing for that.
I think we call it 용가리 something. 용가리 chicken.
Okay, we call it Dino Nugs.
Yeah.
So they wanted Dino Nugs, and then we realized, we were out.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the local Lotte Mart or whatever has frozen chicken nuggets. I'm not 100% sure if they're dinosaur shaped or not.
Also, the dino nugs that you're referring to are American. It's not a Korean thing.
Specifically, I wanted like the American dino shaped chicken nuggets.
Oh, I thought that was a Korean thing.
I'm pretty sure.
Interesting.
I'm not gonna say who.
I see,
I'm
I
not
see.
gonna start a culture war here.
Yeah.
But at least I know them to be American. But anyway, that's also one of the things that prompted it. It's like, we got to get Dino Nugs. But basically, I just look for excuses to go to Costco. So, yeah.
Is there a go-to? We should do a Costco haul.
What do you mean?
Like introduce everything that you buy regularly.
We could do that.
Yeah.
As alternative content.
Yes.
There's so many influencers now comparing Korean Costco's to American though, so I don't want to just follow that trend.
But what's your go-to?
Shopping list? Oh, there's
Like
so much.
one, like like name one that you always get when you go.
Oh, interesting. These days it's been the cookie variety pack.
Or the one that they bake themselves.
Yeah, so they have the oatmeal raisin, the chocolate chip, and the double chocolate.
Ah,
Yeah, I mean,
I love them.
we held off for so long because it's gross if you think about how much sugar and butter are in that thing.
Yeah.
But now that our kids can actually help eat them, and yeah, we give it to them as a treat. Yeah, we buy that almost every trip now.
I love their muffins too.
Oh yeah, but those, yeah, we have found we don't eat them quickly enough. Yeah, they're
Like
so
the
big.
one that has like the chocolate chunks. They're amazing.
Other things, staples? I'll have to think about it. I'm surprised I'm struggling, but it's because I don't go regularly enough. And to your point too, sometimes we go to different Costco locations here. And actually I found the Yangjae one versus the Gongse one. They're quite different, both in layout and what they carry.
I don't even know there was a place called Gongse.
Oh, south. I'm
Interesting.
sure maybe that's not the official city name, but I think it's Gongse-jam. So.
Oh, interesting.
Oh, okay. I have to talk about this too. The other thing that kind of prompted it is ground beef. So I don't. It's first harder to find ground beef in general in Korea,
Is
and
it?
secondly, it's expensive when I do find it.
Because they're like Hanure.
it should be cheap meat, right? Ground
Yeah,
beef.
yeah.
But in Korea, it's not much cheaper by weight than the
Yeah.
other cuts. So I'm like, oh, what's going on? But at Costco, I think the value is pretty good.
Okay.
Okay, here's the problem, June. I noticed at first, like this was one of the top things I wanted to get on this most recent trip, but I noticed as soon as we got in, people had in their carts near the entrance, they already had ground beef in them. And
Oh,
so I'm
because it's like the first thing that
yeah,
they get.
I'm like, that's weird,
Oh.
right? And then I'm like thinking, oh, why would they immediately go there, get ground beef, which, should stay cold, is kind of perishable, right? And then do the rest of their shopping. And then as I get to the meat section, I find out they've been out of the ground beef for like 10 minutes already. Like I had no chance.
Oh, so Costco's like famous amongst Koreans
Apparently, yeah.
for.
I think
I know that their like meat section in general is very popular amongst Koreans, but I didn't know of the ground
beef is the only
But
thing
what
that
do
was
they do?
out.
But what do you
Yeah.
do with ground beef?
I mean, I make smash burgers, you like flavor it Mexican style, you can make tacos,
Oh, nice.
dips, quesadillas, whatever. So spaghetti, ground beef is awesome, June. But apparently,
Very versatile.
yeah, I don't even know what Korean dishes contain ground beef or if they're just making burgers with it. But
I'm pretty sure they're not making burgers.
oh, really? What would Koreans make with ground beef then?
I don't know, but it's not burgers. I mean, one thing, like just random one thing that comes to mind is tteokguk. Maybe it's because it's tteokguk season.
But no, the amount of ground beef in this thing is pretty crazy. You could feed an army with ground beef if you're just putting it in tteokguk. So.
Now I'm craving for burgers.
My burgers are pretty good. But okay, yeah, that's my weekend, June. Went to Costco on Saturday, church on Sunday. Yeah, that's it.
I know that I say this every time, but it just sounds very eventful for me. It's just like we're living very different worlds.
We are living very different worlds with different schedules and
Yeah.
maybe expectations of parenting.
Yeah.
June, how was your weekend?
I went to Seongsu on Saturday.
Hip.
It is very hip.
The Brooklyn of Korea.
The Brooklyn of Korea.
Wait, I should say the Brooklyn of Seoul. If Seoul is New York, anyway.
Yeah, anyways. Did you know that at a single moment in Seongsu, there are 50 different pop-ups happening?
Wow, I believe it.
It is very lively.
Yeah.
And they opened up like this Olive Young,
Okay.
which is, I think it must be the biggest in the world in Seongsu,
Yeah.
catered towards, it's a very different Olive Young. It's
Okay.
like your Olive Young experience kind of thing.
Yeah.
It has like 4 stories or whatever.
Whoa.
Yeah,
That's
right.
cool,
Because like
yeah.
so basically every section that you see on a normal Olive Young is a 4. And it was like, I'm not like personally very interested in like cosmetics or Olive Young in general,
Yeah.
but like I kept thinking like foreigners must love this place because
yeah.
it's like it's just newly opened like a month ago or something. That was amazing.
But you think it's specifically catering to tourists?
I think a lot of things in Seongsu are, especially Olive Young.
Yeah.
Because it's very like, it became a thing where foreigners just go to.
It is, yeah.
And they like shop everything that's there.
Yeah, here's my Olive Young haul, and
Yeah.
they post it on Instagram
Yeah.
or whatever, yeah.
What else is there? I randomly went to a friend's birthday party. That's pretty much it.
Randomly, like it was a last minute join.
Oh, because like,
Why is that?
okay, this is
Going
the
to a
thing.
birthday party is whatever, but the way you said I randomly went.
I
to
randomly
this-
went,
yeah.
literally, because
You don't know the person?
I know this person. I didn't know it was his birthday.
Okay.
He posted something on Instagram,
Mm-hmm.
and it was very close to Seongsu. So I was like, "Oh, I'm near the area," and he was like, "Oh, actually, it's my birthday.
Uh,
Do you want to come?"
Oh.
Yeah. So that's
oh, so you messaged after seeing the story.
yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
So that was like randomly,
That
pretty
is random.
randomly.
Yeah. That's fun though.
Yeah, that was pretty much it.
Sounds much more eventful than mine.
Really, I feel like yours is much more eventful. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Cool. But yeah, June, it's time for another news recap.
Yes.
This time for the months of December 2024 and January 2025. And it's been quite the eventful news season
Yeah.
in both countries, I'd say, in Korea and the US.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, many people DM'd us and messaged us through other channels, through our Discord, etc., asking us to recap the, what was it, the martial law declaration. Could you say the Korean name for martial law?
Keomnyong. Yeah.
Which I heard many Koreans didn't even know what that word was before this happened.
No, I'm pretty sure they know what it was. I mean,
I
I'm
heard a
pretty
lot
sure
of
they
people-
heard of it.
Okay.
They don't know exactly what it was because they haven't lived it.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
I heard a lot of people didn't even know what the word was before it happened. So
Are they not Korean Americans?
they're Koreans.
Koreans? They didn't know what the word was?
Yeah.
Then I'm pretty shocked.
But yeah, so that happened. It's been almost 2 months now. So that was early December, right?
Early December, yeah.
We wanted to cover that finally. And then, again, tragically, end of December was the Jeju air crash. Happened at the very end of last month.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's overall very kind of sad. Or I guess I don't know what the right word is.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll cover those two today from the Korean news cycle. And then on the American side, we don't always do this, or we haven't been, but there's just, I think, such interesting news coming out of the US that I wanted to bring up two things from the US as well. First, the murder of United Healthcare CEO, Brian Thompson, allegedly by Luigi Mangione. Which I think is just has so many different angles we could tackle, comparing the countries and cultures. And then secondly, the LA wildfires that are, I think, finally starting to become contained. But
Really?
yeah, the damage is just out of control, and it's been going on for over a week now. So, but
Okay,
actually, close to 2 weeks now. So, yeah.
So a big disclaimer is that we are going to cover all these news, but these topics are rather very heavy. But we're not going to go into very deep details, which if we wanted to, we can go on forever and ever. We're not going to tackle this lightheartedly, but we're not going to go in very deep into it. And also, I think most of these topics are very heavily politically infused, if you will. And at least I will try my best to be very neutral and not go into like the politics issue. So if you feel like there are a little bit of gaps of describing the overall situation, then it's because I'm trying to not be too political about it.
Okay. My ask, June, would be maybe you could present both sides of the spectrum if it is political, rather than exclude it entirely.
I don't really. Okay, I'll try to.
Okay.
Because
Yeah, I understand.
maybe I don't really understand both sides either.
I see. Yeah,
to
that is
represent
hard.
them. Yeah.
Yeah, so just to piggyback off that, I think we, just like some of our other regularly recurring, I guess, episode themes, we just want to use the current events and news headlines to as a jumping off for Springboard to dive
Yes.
into cultural differences and kind of comparing the two countries, which is, again, what we always aim to do on this podcast. So,
Yeah.
we're not necessarily going to provide the most detailed description or overview of the events. And neither are we going to make any sort of judgment, I think, on them. So, yeah.
Okay. So where should we start? Should we start with like a very brief overview timeline?
Yeah, let's do, again, the martial law first.
Okay, so on December 3rd of last year, 2024, approximately at 10:30 p.m., 10:29 p.m. to be exact, the president and this I think most Korean people would resonate with. It was like just very completely totally out of the blue.
Okay.
Out of nowhere, he just like declared martial law, stating that there are anti-state forces in the current like political state or like in society in general, and that they're like North Korean communists. And basically when he mentioned anti-state forces, I think he was referring to mostly the opposing party.
Oh.
Yeah.
He was accusing them of being...
Anti-state forces.
Wow. Okay.
And I'll try to get into why he thought they were. They have the majority of the seats in the National Assembly of
The opposing party.
The opposing party is.
Okay.
So like whenever that happens, it's very difficult for the
For anything
president
to
to
get
do
done.
whatever. Yeah. But like they were very overtly trying to stop anything that he's trying to do. So I think in the president mind, he thought it was like kind of like an anarchy state.
Yeah.
Because they impeached like basically they impeached a lot of people that he appointed. Yeah.
So they've been on an impeachment spree.
A lot of these national government agencies was with no leader.
Oh, I
'Cause
didn't know that.
Anytime he was trying to appoint someone, they impeached him.
So did he already appoint them and then they impeached him, or they would not approve his appointment?
I think both ways.
All right, I got it.
So a lot of the agencies had no leader.
That's wild.
Yeah, so
Okay.
for a long time, but people really didn't know about this.
I did not know about this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he also accused of rigged electoral fraud also. That's why immediately after he declared martial law, he placed some forces to the National Election Commission to like investigate. Yeah.
What election happened recently that could have been fraudulent?
I don't know how to say it in American. I don't know how to say it in English.
Yeah.
But it's like where you
The parliamentary election?
Yeah, the parliamentary
Okay,
election.
got it.
Yeah.
In the US, it would have been called a midterm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And on the next day, but it's just like 3 hours later, which is December 4th, approximately around 1 a.m., the martial law got lifted by the National Assembly. And then,
Oh, was it really that soon after? 3 hours?
yeah, 3 hours. Yeah.
I thought it was more like 6, which is still ridiculous,
Yeah.
but okay.
And then on December 14th, the National Assembly votes to impeach the president. So then he got suspended from all of his presidential duties. December 24th, the National Assembly again impeached the prime minister who was acting president. And this is a very interesting turning point. And so now currently the deputy prime minister is this guy called Choi Sang-mok.
Okay.
Yeah. And on January 15th of this month, the president got arrested. And it marks the first time that a sitting South Korean president has been arrested and detained. And January 18th, which is 2 days ago of this recording day, the court granted an extension of President Yoon's detention. So they're citing concerns about potential evidence destruction and all that. Yeah.
And then yesterday, there were riots.
There were riots like going
Oh.
on for at least a couple weeks.
I didn't know. But yesterday, the riots seemed particularly
Oh,
violent.
the riot. Sorry, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
As opposed to a protest.
Oh,
yeah,
yeah,
they
yeah,
went
yeah.
to like the court or whatever, right?
I don't know where exactly they were rioting, but
Yeah.
it looked pretty violent and bad. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So that's the overall
of course,
timeline.
throughout all of the last almost 2 months now, there has been constant demonstrations and protests and counter protests on both sides. Yeah.
Yes.
Cool.
So there were a lot of controversies around like whether the National Assembly should impeach the president or not, which I think at the time a lot of Koreans were supportive of.
Yeah.
But then later when they impeached the acting president and knowing about like why the president had to declare martial law, whether it was right or wrong, like his intention,
Yeah.
people like, I think certain people on the conservative side started to think like, hey, like, oh, this is what happened. Like they're trying to impeach everything
Yeah.
and trying to do it their way. So surprisingly, that the reason why I said that the impeachment of the acting president who was prime minister was sort of like a turning point
Yeah.
is that so right after the impeachment, the approval rate of the opposing party skyrocketed,
Okay.
of course. But then after they impeached the acting president,
The former prime minister.
yeah, it sort of made a cross again.
Yeah. It's like, hold up, guys.
Yeah.
This is too much.
Yeah.
Like, you guys are out of control.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a lot to discuss here. But building off that point right there, I think it sets a very concerning precedent. If the parliament, if you have, let's say, a majority in the parliament now, you can essentially just either impeach your way to whichever leader you want, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of concerning, first of all. Secondly, I think there is a question I have. What was the justification for arresting him, right?
Oh, because he got impeached.
Yeah.
And if he gets impeached, he has to get investigated
Yeah.
for the
The reason why he was impeached, right? Okay.
the Supreme Court to rule whether the impeachment was justified or not. And if they rule that he gets impeached, right now he's just like suspended from his duties.
Yeah.
Like to actually impeach him, they have to make the final rule.
Yeah.
And for them to make the final rule, they have to investigate him. But he refused to.
He was refusing the investigation,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
not cooperating. I see. That makes sense,
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah, I don't even know how that would go down. Like if someone refuses to.
Yeah.
And I guess in my mind, the investigation would have to get the right level of, I don't know, warrants or approvals, and then they could go about doing their job. But that feels like a separate thing from actually arresting the president for not cooperating.
But what if he doesn't cooperate? Because this is like the first time in constitutional history that they're going to arrest the president.
Yeah.
So the tricky thing is that he has his own like security wing.
Yeah. And he was
Where-
ordering them to basically.
Or basically their duty is to protect the president
Yeah.
in any circumstance. And so if the police or the prosecutor, or what do you call them? The CIO,
Yeah.
Corruption Investigation Office for high ranking officials.
Okay.
They're sort of like an independent agency that can investigate like these very high ranked officials if they can.
Yeah.
So they were trying to arrest him while the security wing was trying to protect him. And it's a very blurred line in terms of like what is like in terms of law,
Yeah.
like what should happen.
I guess in my mind, the question is, what does investigation entail? So from my perspective, it's like, oh, you need to search his offices, his presidential offices, home
Yeah.
residence.
Yeah.
You have to maybe gather evidence, take his phone, etc.
Yeah.
And you're saying then maybe he was ordering his personal security detail to not allow people onto his home or anything.
Yeah.
I think, okay, that makes sense to me now. Kind of. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Gene, the first thing I wanted to cover was, I guess, your reaction to the immediate, let's say the first 24 to 48 hours of this, when martial law was declared, then rolled back. And then I'll at least share what my experience was like throughout that.
So first, when I heard of it is, of course, as most people in Korea get used from, is like a 단톡방.
Yeah, someone messaged your group chat.
Yeah, someone was like, President Yoon declared martial law. And first I thought it was kind of like a joke.
Yeah.
And then it felt so surreal.
Yeah.
I don't even know what's going to happen when they declare martial law. And my naive mind was like, oh, it's not going to really affect me
Yeah.
anyways. And then I heard that the National Assembly can annul it anyways, which I thought was going to happen, which did.
Yeah.
So it really didn't affect my daily life that much.
Yeah.
But I start to wonder, what if the National Assembly failed to do that and then martial law is still going on? I don't know. But like, again, like naively, I thought it's not going to be like the martial laws that happened before, like in the 1980s or like 70s.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Yeah.
Because like in my modern Korean mind,
Yeah.
I was just thinking it can't, like, that kind of stuff can't happen today. Yeah.
So did you find out at night or the morning after?
The day of.
Oh, you found out at night.
Yeah.
And then did you go back to sleep after you found out?
I went back to sleep because I thought nothing really
Yeah.
serious is going to happen anyways.
Yeah,
but then I know that a lot of people couldn't sleep that day.
Yeah, that's what I
or
get
like that
into.
night. Yeah.
I also found out the night that it happened before the National Assembly had rolled it back.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, that's its own. It's kind of funny to me.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly the lines of presidential power versus the parliamentary power.
Mm-hmm.
But this seems like an executive order where the president has to. I guess my immediate reaction was actually surprised that something that the president could do using his presidential powers could just be rolled back like that.
Yeah.
Maybe to me that shows that Korean democracy is actually quite healthy. On the flip side, it's like, what if there actually was a really crazy emergency? Could politics prevent, let's say, the really strong decisive action from happening? Anyway, but yeah, I found out at night, and then I also was like, this is this serious? Seems kind of like a joke. I didn't have any of the background of the, I guess, previous martial law and whatever, Korea in the 70s, etc., where this has a lot of people in Korea, Korean citizens have a lot of PTSD over this kind of thing,
Yeah.
right? Because of the previous dictatorships, etc. But yeah, for me too, it's just kind of, this is noise.
Yeah.
Like this is politics as usual. But I think I started getting a lot of messages that I think in the next 2 hours, I got like 8 inbound messages from people in America being like, hey, is everything okay?
Yeah.
We just saw martial law. What's going on?
Yeah.
And I was like, I really don't know, but nothing seems to have changed.
Yeah.
But thanks for reaching out. Right.
Yeah.
And I think in our Discord too, there were people immediately asking like, oh, how are things in Korea? Because they also saw that, or maybe it was reported that there was some sort of news or media ban too.
Yeah.
Like you're not allowed to even talk about martial law. And I think, that to me would be a quite scary thing.
Yeah.
If they maybe start to censor or block incoming and outgoing communication.
Yes.
Right. About this type of thing. Right. That to me was like, oh, if that's actually happening, that is concerning. I don't know if that ever happened. Do you know if there's ever some sort of media ban or censorship on this type of topic?
Not that I know of for
Okay.
this time, but
Yeah.
that's like the typical thing that you do for martial
Martial
law.
law, yeah.
Using the word typical is kind of funny, but anyways,
Yeah.
the last time it happened was like 1980, and then they for sure blocked media. That
Or,
goes,
they would have arrested people if they
yeah.
said the wrong thing.
Yes.
Or got it, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think if it ever got to that point, I would have been, much more concerned, or it would have felt real.
Yeah.
But for me too, by the next morning, it had already been rolled back, and
Yeah.
it just kind of seemed like, oh, this is a no-op, basically. Yeah, so that was my initial experience. But then that next morning, I think my wife was talking with her mom. And basically the mom was saying my mother-in-law was saying she couldn't sleep at all. And it was just so much trauma from the previous martial law
Yeah.
when she was in college and under the dictator. I think it's fair to say, she was a very active protester demonstrating against the previous president.
Yeah.
And I think it's fair to say he was a dictator.
Yeah.
And, her friends had gotten maybe physically hurt or arrested and all these things. June, that next morning when I heard, I guess, my wife relay her mother's experience was when it started to be more real to me.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this was actually a very serious thing that a lot of people are going to be really, I think, emotionally, I guess, invested in or have a very strong reaction to.
Yeah.
It's not just a joke.
So I think it hit very differently for the generation above because they actually experienced that firsthand, and even my generation didn't, because the last time again when it happened was 1980. I don't know if the current president, when he declared martial law, he wanted to go to the extremes of being like very violent like that. We never know.
Yeah.
But again, like it's like that contrast was very interesting. Like even my generation, like for me personally, because I didn't experience it myself, I just thought like, I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And like kind of like perceiving it in a very naive way. Of course, like they're not going to do it in the way that they did like 30 years ago, right? But I can definitely understand why it felt differently for like my father's or like their father's generation. Yeah.
But the president, what is President Yoon? The president who declared martial law, he knew what he was doing, right? He was from our parents' generation. So he knew exactly what this kind of declaration would, I guess, do to the psyche of Koreans.
Some people claim that he didn't know what he was doing, kind of, alluding to his incompetency. Like he didn't even know what this really meant.
Really?
But I don't know. That's what some people say.
I see. Like he's so out of touch that this didn't seem like he still went through with it, even knowing what this would do to the psyche of that Korean generation.
Is what some people claim.
Okay.
I don't know.
And
who knows what went through his mind when he was doing it?
Yeah, I think that's fair. Hopefully the investigation will turn something up.
Yeah.
But I think the other thing I wanted to bring up is, I think what also I found very shocking was the president would do something like this without the support of his party. I mean, that's what seemed to come out after this. It's like he had talked to maybe very few people, one or two.
Yes.
And just kind of did this thing on his own.
Yeah.
And that just seems so wild to me. I don't know. Like
But he is kind of like that character.
Is he that?
From the get-go, when he moved out of the Blue House and like very aggressively wanted to set office somewhere else, like in the middle of Seoul, when a lot of people were very concerned, not for the very fact of moving out of the Blue House, but like how abruptly he was trying to do it.
I see.
But he just did it anyways.
So he's kind of a rogue rebel politician in a sense. Like, I'm just going to do it.
He has kind of that reputation.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay. June, another thing that I think made me realize this was kind of a real thing rather than just kind of some joke or political whatever. In our Discord, one of the members, one of our Patreons, said they also, they were out or something when martial law first happened. But then they saw tanks rolling through the streets of Seoul, and they were like, oh, this is not a joke at all. This is something very real that could actually have material impact. So, again, I didn't witness any of this, but I think just for our audience too, they were literally tanks and troops in the streets of Seoul. I mean, just seeing a tank in the street would do something to you. So, I can understand that. Probably I took it too lightly.
Yeah. One of the very key points of the president's trial for getting impeached is whether you can view this as an insurrection or not. And one of the key points is the fact that he tried to block the National Assembly to roll it back. So they're actually, which is, I think, illegal by constitution. So that is a very critical point in his trial, I think, which I think the Korean citizens were very lucky that the parliament acted very quickly to get there.
Yeah.
Some people claim that, I don't know if this is like kind of like a joke thing. Yeah. But people were doing like 회식s around the National Assembly. The not the people, but what do you call them? The
politicians.
The politicians, and that's why they were very quick to.
Was it on a Thursday night? 회식 night.
It was October 3rd. So let me check my calendar.
Wait, December 3rd, right?
Oh, December 3rd. Yeah. It was a Tuesday. I don't know why they were doing 회식.
But that is kind of funny. Yeah. So again, 회식 is kind of a team bonding dinner, usually over drinks and food and maybe karaoke after. And you're saying one of the jokes is that all the National Assembly members, or many of them, were just having one of these team dinners nearby, so they could all rush back and vote on this very quickly.
But kudos to all the Assembly members, whether conservative or which political party they're associated with, to act very quickly.
Yeah, I think one of the key visuals that I'll always remember from this is one of the Assembly women with like a machine gun to her chest, basically continuing to walk into the parliament. Yeah. I don't know why I'm getting emotional. It's just such like a courageous act to me. Yeah. It's like, no, you will not stop me from entering the government building. So
yeah. Okay. Yeah. I also wanted to mention it's very difficult to depict the entire picture without mentioning the situation of the opposing party.
Okay.
Because the leader of the opposing party is like a very almost like promising next president candidate. But then he's going through a lot of trials for criminal charges.
Okay.
And if he gets the ruling that actually his criminal activities were true, and he gets like detained, like he gets like sentenced in prison or whatever, by law he cannot run for president.
I see.
So they're very, I think, anxious about getting the current president impeached as quickly as possible,
So that the opposition party leader can take office?
so that the presidential election can happen earlier,
No, they're so...
before
I
he
see.
gets the final ruling.
This is crazy.
Yeah.
I see.
And that's why I think, and people are starting to see this.
Yeah.
It's not like really about the people's good. It's more about like they want him to become president,
I see.
is what some people are claiming again.
Understood.
Yeah.
One other thing I want to get to, again, in the immediate aftermath of this, people were trying to rationalize and explain the president's behavior. One thing I had heard was that he was trying to protect his wife too, who was under a lot of investigation
Yeah.
for criminal charges as well.
Yeah.
And I don't know what martial law would do to protect this or stop that, but that was at least another thing that came up. You had heard this too, right?
Yeah. I think his approval rate, like right before the martial law, was plunging down crazily.
I mean, it was already very low.
It was
went even
already
lower.
very low to begin with, but like after the accusations of like all the things that his wife has done, people were losing a lot of faith in him because he didn't really address it that much.
I see.
But yeah, so some people claim that the martial law was to protect his wife.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess I haven't heard about that as much recently. But yeah.
Yeah.
The immediate thing that came to mind when I heard that was, do you remember when Will Smith slapped Chris Rock?
Yeah.
I think the Oscars.
Yeah.
It was kind of this, I don't know, maybe visceral reaction or response to maybe defending his wife.
Yeah.
And again, there seems to be, at least between Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith,
Yeah.
kind of very weird relationship.
Yeah.
Where she almost controls him, and anyway, it seemed like very parallel here. It's like, oh, he's gonna do whatever he can to protect her,
Yeah.
even if it doesn't make sense, if it's insane.
Yeah.
Like that's what he feels the urge to do, or almost obligation to do. Anyway, just wanted to make that parallel.
I think I saw like a meme there.
I think so.
Yeah.
Which I think, June, is a great segue into the next part of this I wanted to talk about, which is, I think, the reaction from the international community to this incident,
Yeah.
compared to kind of the local, I guess, Korean population and how they're taking this.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll start. Yeah, in the immediate aftermath, I think I saw a lot of not a lot, but I did see posts on my social media kind of making fun of this.
Yeah.
I guess the immediate response was concern.
Yeah.
Like, holy crap, martial law.
Yeah.
What's going on? Are they at war? Really, they were like, did North Korea invade? Like, what's happening,
Yeah.
right? And then kind of after that died down and everyone saw it was rolled back and it kind of seemed like so clownish. Then some jokes started to appear.
Yeah.
Like, fastest martial law ever, or like, what's going on in Korea? What a joke,
Yeah.
right? And I think there was also some very real impact to the Korean as a country, both from reputation, also from economic standpoint too.
Yeah.
There was at least one very prominent VC that stopped all their late stage diligence investigations into
Yeah.
Korean startups that they were potentially going to invest money into. Basically citing that, okay, Korea is not a stable country. Why would we ever think about investing in Korean companies or putting money into them, right?
Yeah.
And I can understand that, right? Martial law seems like a very serious and kind of big deal. Secondly, I'll just point to, I don't know if it's direct causation or whatever, but the Korean won versus, let's say, USD exchange rate, it's at is it 20-year high? Low? It's very unfavorable towards the Korean won.
Yeah. The highest ever since the
IMF?
subprime mortgage.
Oh, 2009.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. I thought it was going back even further. But anyway, the exchange rate's going in the opposite direction. Korean would like it too. And then I also saw a headline, I forgot, I want to say close to $20 billion had been pulled out of Korea as far as global investment.
Yeah.
And I think, if not directly attributed to this, I think you can attribute it to this overall like uncertainty or kind of the reputational hit that Korea took because of this basically martial law declaration and the fallout. So yeah, I don't know if you want to talk about the local, like how Koreans are responding to this now that it's been going on for maybe a month and a half. Also, are they aware of kind of the international damage, at least to the reputation of Korea as a stable government, etc., or a country worth investing in?
I don't really understand what the immediate aftermath is going to be. But as Korean people usually are, they're very aware of how the external perspective is towards Korea, and they talk about that a lot. That like, oh, like what a shame, like these new news coverages, foreign news coverages, though what they're claiming about what Korea is and all that, which I think is true. But I also think that Korea is a very unstable country as a premise because of North Korea.
I see.
And this is just a very symbolic act that happened as a result of that. But there has been always very high tensions between, both political parties. So I don't think that, and I think this is a very fundamental problem of Korean politics, and same with America, but it's so split. The country is so split. And because of that, and like having North Korea and China and all that political influence that are, having certain ways of infiltrating through the Korean society right now, it is a very unstable country to begin with.
At least geopolitically,
Yeah.
I think that's a fact, yeah.
And I don't think anything has changed for the factual situation of what it was. And so like, I don't know, VCs pulling out of Korea, I think that's kind of naive. Like, how stable did you think Korea was to begin with?
That's very
because of this
interesting,
very symbolic thing that just happened. International reputation-wise, I think, of course, it damaged Korea certain ways. But I think in my naive mind, again, I think normal people in general, they don't really care about what happens in other countries anyways. So I think in the long run, of course, we have to, work very hard to reinstate where we were. I don't even know where we were to begin with anyways,
I see.
But I think the fundamentals hasn't changed for the goods and the bads.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a very interesting perspective that I wouldn't have had at all.
Yeah.
I think just the foreigner, or let's say Western or outside perspective of Korea, because of Hallyu and everything, because Korea is such a hot trending country right now, if it weren't for these things coming up, I don't think people would have known things like Korea is so unstable politically, or even for me, June, as a Korean American, but being born and raised in the U.S., I think one of the most surprising things when I moved here and found out more about Korean history was Korea's democracy is not that old. I think the first formal, elections were about in the late 80s, right? It's like 35-year-old democracy. And with a 5-year president term, right? It's like Korea's kind of on its 7th democratically elected president term. Yeah, that's almost like thinking, okay, take U.S. back to the 7th or 8th presidency. Like that's how fragile almost it feels like the Korean democracy is. But that's not something that foreigners would have known, I think, right? And if it weren't for these things, I think it's fair to say for most people in the world, right, the last 2-3 years has been their very first exposure to Korea, honestly. Before that, they would have only known, okay, North Korea, ha ha ha, like Kim Jong-un, whatever.
Yeah.
Right? That's what they would associate with Korea.
Yeah.
But now, all of a sudden, Korea is, South Korea, not just North Korea.
Yeah.
Right? And it's the country of K-pop and K-dramas and Hallyu and all this amazing food and culture and all these things, right? And they would never have known, let's say, about the geopolitical instability, or maybe some of the some of these other things about Korea as a country. And to be clear, I think it's good that people don't idealize or only know one side of Korea. But I will say, on the other hand, it's kind of a shame. I think
it is a shame.
Really, in the last 2-3 years, this was most people in the world's first impression of Korea, and it was so positive and so good.
Yeah.
And then stuff like this happens, right, back to back, kind of the presidential martial law declaration, and then as we'll get to Jeju Air. But yeah, that's just, for me, it's like, oh, it's a shame. Like Korea, yeah, again, for Koreans, it's kind of, they grew up here. They knew the history of the country. And even though it is so different from 30 years ago, they've kind of seen it change maybe in front of them. But for most people outside of Korea, again, this was their first exposure. And yeah, it was such a good first impression too. And then I think these things happen, and it gives a more accurate picture. But I think it's a shame.
Yeah, to begin, the fundamental premise is that it is a shame. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it by saying that this is nothing or anything. But
Yeah.
I still don't think the fundamentals of why people thought positively about Korea, like all the Hallyu and culture and K-pop and that, hasn't been very severely damaged by this. Fundamentally, no. Number two, I think the reason why we're getting more attention by the international press is it just shows that the state that we are at right now. Before, like, I think even like 10 years ago, I don't think a lot of the international public might have been very interested in what's happening in Korea. And in addition to that, I think, of course, this is a very unfortunate thing that happened, but it also shows how Korea's democracy and its system is working in a very healthy way. Like, I hate the fact that the country is split so half and half.
Very polarized, yeah.
But like, we still can very freely protest about things, and we can impeach the president if he did something wrong and all that. I think it's the democratic system still acting very healthily. Think about, like, even Japan. I personally don't think that their democracy is very healthy in the fact that their conservative party has been ruling for over 50 years.
Oh, is that true?
Yeah. Whereas like in Korea, still we have like a very
back and forth.
It's not a healthy divide, but still there are a lot of different opinions going back and forth, which I think will, if you think about it in a positive way, we're going to plateau into a better solution, right?
Somewhere in the middle, right?
Somewhere in the middle.
And a moderate.
Yeah.
Got it.
So there are some positive shades in this incident too, if you will.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah.
So you're saying basically now Korea has gotten to the level where it is relevant on the international stage, and when something like this happens, it actually becomes like a major news headline and cycle globally, and that just goes to reflect how big of a platform Korea has now relative to before. I'd agree with that.
Personally, what I think is very alarming about this incident is that Korea is in a very critical state where we really have to find what is the next future vehicle that would push our economy forwards. Like the semiconductor thing, we're losing to a lot of our shares to Taiwan and China and stuff like that.
Yeah.
We don't know how long the Hallyu thing is going to go on. So we have to find new ways to maintain this economic state. And I think politics has a lot to do with this, right? In this very critical moment, rather than like fighting like what's conservative and progressive, whatever, like we really have to unite to think about ways to support this country to move forward. And that's the thing that's kind of alarming rather than the incident itself.
Do you have hope in Korea's democracy and government that it can figure it out and unite and try to do what's best for Korea itself rather than kind of infighting?
I think Korea always found its way for a better Korea. And again, the positive thing about the Korean public is that even though they might seem very stubborn in certain areas, when they think that something is better than the other, we come to a consensus very quickly. And there's this momentum where everyone thinks the same way.
Yeah.
And so move on.
Action can happen once there's consensus.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. I'll just channel what my dad has always echoed to me, June, which is, again, he always said Korea has such a sad and tragic history.
Yeah.
But Korea almost only has itself to blame. Every chance there was to kind of unite and become stronger as a group, he would say it's always been undermined by political infighting and people being more greedy for personal gain, rather than trying to really unite and do what's best for the country as a whole to push it forward.
Yeah.
So I think my dad's perspective would be, oh, this is kind of business as usual. Korea is gonna shoot itself in the foot and
Yeah.
handicap itself
Yeah.
with this infighting, with this greed,
Yeah.
with this politicization, rather than really uniting and pushing forward as a
Yeah.
country. But I think I appreciate your perspective, which is despite all that,
Yeah.
Korea is still here,
Yeah.
still surviving, and maybe even thriving in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So maybe there's still hope.
Yeah. Even thinking about the last impeachment that happened like 10 years ago, I think the Korean public is reacting a bit differently because they went through the former impeachment. And I think that they're reacting in a more mature way than the last time, whether it's like regardless of the political views, right?
Yeah.
Because they went through this once before.
Yeah.
And I think that's already progress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. The last point on this is just
Yeah.
the parallels between this and what's been happening in the U.S. Between Trump moving out of the White House and never really being there. He moved to his residence in Florida and basically governed from there.
Yeah.
Combined with the January 6th protests and insurrection attempt in the U.S.
Okay.
Right, and I think that just happened yesterday. Right, I think the riots were pretty violent and severe, and I think people are drawing a lot of parallels.
I have
that.
not heard of this.
Oh, the riots yesterday?
There was an insurrection attempt.
No, not insurrection. The riots got quite violent yesterday, and I think
In
it
the
was
U.S., you're saying?
in Korea.
Oh, in Korea.
Sorry,
Okay.
sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I think people are drawing parallels between the violent riots yesterday following the arrest of the Korean president.
Yeah.
Clearly, they're trying to either maybe free him or basically violently protesting against his arrest, right? And parallels between that and what happened in the U.S. on
Yeah.
January 6th. So I don't know where I'm going with this, other than I think there are very clear parallels. I know it's almost a meme, but some of the protesters in Korea, supporting the president, they were holding signs that had, I think, Elon Musk, Donald Trump, and the president together. And I don't know how widespread this was,
Yeah.
but it's kind of like they very clearly are aligning themselves with the MAGA movement
Yeah.
and what's happening in U.S. politics.
Yeah.
And I think that to me is so interesting and fascinating. Yeah.
I think when Korean, like the conservative, supportive people are protesting, they always, associate it with the U.S., right?
I see.
I don't think they're necessarily viewing America in Democratic Party or the Republican Party. They're just like America.
Oh, I see.
And the allyship, what's the word for there?
Yeah, we're allies for sure.
Allyship, is that a word?
Yeah.
So they're supportive of the allyship in general.
But it's always the American Conservative Party. It feels like they're allied with.
No, if this were to be the Harris government, they would hold up the Harris
Really?
sign. Yeah.
Okay, that I don't know why I find hard to believe,
Yeah.
but if that's true, then I see. It's just really aligning themselves with America.
Yeah.
Not necessarily the American Conservative Party.
I'm just saying it's less so
I see.
than their view of American politics is less detailed than how an American would think.
I see.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you don't think this is true? They see the rise of American conservatism, Trump getting reelected despite everything that's happened, and saying, "Oh, like we're the conservative party in Korea.
Yeah.
We need to follow that, path.
Yeah.
We need to align ourselves
Yeah.
with that specific America."
I think so.
Okay. Sorry. Do you
Wait.
think it's? You said it's not necessarily aligning with American conservatism, but just America overall.
Oh, it's just America overall.
But I'm saying it seems like very much that the Korean Conservative Party is aligning themselves with American conservatism.
Oh no, I don't necessarily think so.
Oh, interesting.
Because if anything, the Korean American allyship, especially in terms of the military, it's gonna weaken after the Trump administration, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't really make sense.
Right?
Yeah. So it's just like aligning to America.
Okay, interesting.
That's what I think. It's just my personal view. But I've never seen like the Conservative Party like vetoing America because it was a more progressive government.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I mean that's very interesting. I think when an American sees these types of posters, etc., they would assume that the Korean Conservative Party is trying to align with the, let's say, American Conservative Party. But again, what you're saying is that Korean conservatives just generally align with America, whereas the Democratic Party in Korea generally aligns with less America, I guess.
Because it is opposed to the being allied with China and their regime. It's like the liberal world versus like the not.
No. Again,
Yeah.
that's good to clarify.
Yeah.
So not something I would have immediately assumed. Okay, now we can move on.
Okay, so the Jeju air crash incident. A quick overview is on December 29th at 8:54 a.m., a Jeju Air passenger plane arrived from Bangkok to Muan Airport. They received landing clearance, and at 8:57, which is 3 minutes later, air traffic control warned of possible bird strikes. Around 9 a.m., which is 3 minutes later, the pilot detected aircraft issues and issued a distress signal, Mayday. The plane attempted, so there was a first attempt to land, but then they couldn't land, so the plane attempted a second landing but failed to go around for unknown reasons. And at 9:03 a.m., the aircraft attempted a belly landing, which is where the aircraft lands without landing gear with the wheels.
Yeah.
From the opposite runway direction without deploying landing gear. And the plane, it skidded the runway and collided with the airport structure, which is, I think it's called a localizer, causing an explosion and fire, and resulted in 179 people dead out of 181 people. So there are only 2 survivors. Yeah. So that's the overview.
Yeah, my family was traveling in Taiwan when this happened, and when I read it, it's just, I think even before the official casualty numbers were released, the footage was everywhere.
Yeah.
Which I think is one of the crazy things about news these days.
Yeah.
It's like you can't hide the footage. Then there's a question of is it fake or not, but whatever.
Yeah.
Anyone who saw the footage knew there would probably be no survivors. It was crazy.
Yeah.
Almost unbelievable to just watch. Yeah, so it's very, I don't know what else there is to say. It was super tragic what happened.
So
what was your first reaction to this?
Because everyone saw the footage, which is it was very graphic.
Yeah.
And it's very rare that they can catch that footage. And there were a lot of, initially there were a lot of questions around, why was there such clear footage of this incident?
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that had come up. Yeah.
And I don't know if this is true or not. They claim that there are a lot of so-called plane maniacs that always reside near airports to get footages of planes, arriving and lifting off or whatever. So one of them got this very clear footage.
I see.
Is what I heard. What else? So there are a lot of possible causes around this. One in which would be the engine failure because of the bird strike. And some experts claim that a bird strike wouldn't really stop the landing gear from working. And one of the very unresolved questions is that experts say that there are so many safety guards to make the landing gear operate even in a very extreme condition. And the last resort is a manual pull down, which they say that it just takes seconds. It's in the pit area where you can lift something up and then pull a lever and it'll just come down. And a lot of experts, I think this is still unresolved question of why he couldn't do that. And then the very important, the concrete structure placement of the localizer. And they're claiming that any structure that is built within certain range of the what do you call the
runway?
The runway should be very collapsible, which the actual structure was, but it was built on top of a very rigid concrete structure, and that's what caused the explosion. And this is a very, I think, critical point in why this had to happen. Yeah.
I heard that the actual physical concrete barrier was to code, but it was not on the conservative side. It was a risky placement, but technically nothing.
The placement itself was not an issue because it was outside of the guided principles of I think it's 200 meters away from the runway or something.
Yeah.
The only issue was that the concrete mounting. Yeah.
I see. Yeah. I mean, what was your initial reaction upon seeing this or the news?
It was especially very, I think, it hit harder for the Koreans because it was while all this like political turmoil was going on, and then there's like on top of that, this happens.
Yeah. Also, it was during the holiday season, and even though Christmas, New Year's is not as big of a deal here,
Yeah,
it's still a generally, I think, festive time.
Yeah.
Maybe not to the extent of the U.S., but did that have an impact here too?
definitely. It's like the New Year's, and there was like a 7-day like mourning period,
Yeah.
which was which exactly coincided with like the holiday season. So while it was supposed to be very festive, and you know, like I think I mentioned in some previous episode how like Koreans celebrate the end of year is through like all these TV award ceremonies.
Yeah, like
they all
recaps
got
and-
canceled.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it made like this very, I don't know, the overall atmosphere was very gloomy, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we were on vacation, right? So it did feel weird, like, oh, we were traveling, supposed to be having a good time. And then something like this happens that's
Yeah.
just so tragic.
Yeah.
It's like, how do you even reconcile these two? But yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think, because of this 7-day national mourning period, yeah, what does that entail actually, right? Is it guidance to cancel kind of festive or upbeat celebrations? Anything else associated with that? Like at work, is it different feeling? Or yeah, what does that actually mean in practice, a 7-day mourning period?
I don't think it really affected my work. I think it's more about the entertainment business,
I see.
about concerts and stuff like that getting canceled. Yeah.
But did you feel like a mood shift at work as well after this happened?
Personally, not really.
Interesting.
Maybe it's just my personal character. It doesn't like really affect me, and then it went through like, of course, as does many things that happen in Korea, it went through like a political thing of like, why did they have to build this airport to begin with?
Yeah.
Because like, I don't even know if this is true or not, but like whenever they decide to place like this very big infrastructural thing, it's always very politicized, right? Of like, I want to place an airport in like certain areas.
Why is that? Is it because of, who's deciding where to place it? Because everyone wants one?
Yeah.
And is it like, where's the money coming from? Is it our tax money, et cetera?
Yeah,
Is that why
exactly.
it's politicized? I see.
And some people claim that this airport itself was very forcefully built, even when there were a lot of oppositions. Data shows that there were issues of like, is it really reasonable to build this airport to begin with? Because there are not a lot of passengers.
Yeah.
International passenger wise, 2024, only 350,000 people used this airport for the entire year, compared to, let's say, Incheon공항,
Yeah.
which had 70 million people using it.
Yeah.
So like
I think it sounds like roughly 1,000 passengers a day over the course of a year use this airport. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure most people never even heard of this airport.
Yeah.
I didn't even know either. Like there's an airport in Muan. It was and
it's an international airport. Yeah. I thought there was only one.
and if these kind of airports run international lines, they're only operated by LLCs, like the low cost, whatever, like your JetBlues and stuff like that.
LLC, low cost budget air.
Yeah.
I see.
And some people also claim that it's because it's so rarely used. That's why there are a lot of birds.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Because it was known to be one of the highest, if not the highest, bird strike airports in Korea, right?
Yeah.
That's what I read. Yeah. The only comp I have, June, was the maybe previous national tragedy around the Itaewon crowd crush. At least for me, it felt very somber and different. Going into the office, going about your day. It's just like, how can you even move forward when something like this happens? And yeah, I think it seems, my sense is whenever these kind of, is that the right term, national tragedies happens in Korea?
Yeah.
It weighs very heavily on the country as a whole. And like literally everyone has almost like this somber spirit about their day.
Yeah.
Which I think contrasting it to the US, maybe because the US is just so bigger. Like I think because Korea as a whole, when anything happens to it within its country, the whole country kind of collectively mourns.
Yes.
I think in the US for sure, there is like a bit of that collective spirit, but I do think it's a little bit more localized.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we'll get into it later, but when the LA wildfires are happening, or, right, like, it's, of course, anyone adjacent to that area who has family there, like, they're really suffering. But, you know, the rest of the country kind of, yeah, we know of it. It's sad. Let's hopefully help them.
Yeah.
But I don't think it affects them as deeply as it does in Korea, which makes sense, right? It's just the US is bigger, it's more spread out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's one difference, I'd say. Also, I don't know. It always feels like Koreans are very quick they just want a root cause and find someone to blame.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Which, to be fair, it's not a bad thing, right? Because hopefully once you find out what's to blame, you can actually make an effort to make sure it doesn't ever happen again. But I don't know. It almost seems like too quick.
Yeah.
Right? Like, let's actually have a mourning period and then we'll let the investigation run its course. Rather than just immediately, like, oh, who's to blame?
Yeah.
So I don't know if you'd agree with that, but that's just my sentiment.
Yeah, I think Korean people are starting to realize this too, especially, I don't know, after going through consecutive, like, national tragedies, like the Itaewon incident, and they're trying to find who was to blame, which I thought was kind of too forcefully trying to pinpoint someone. Of course, if you want to find a cause and find like one person to blame, you can, but sometimes it's like very far-fetched. I think I don't know why. Maybe it's because like this time it's because there's so many issues going on the political side that people don't have like the bandwidth to debate about this. But this time it like sort of moved on very smoothly than the other incidents, which I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but sometimes I do feel that Korean people try to find someone to blame, which, I mean, it might be a constructive thing, but after they find that someone to blame, they forget about all the things to, you know, prevent this from happening. They think the ending of this incident should be someone going to jail, rather than like having very like concrete safety measures to ensure that this never happens. Which that is interesting. You keep saying that Korea really wants to find that one person to hold accountable, right? They need to resign, they need to go to jail, whatever. That's not my feeling. My feeling is always, okay, what in the system allowed this to happen, right? It's never going to be one person's fault, right? There's probably shared accountability, etc. I think it's a very interesting perspective, especially in contrast to kind of the, you know, Korea being more collectivist as a society. Ultimately, they still want to find that one individual who's to blame. Whereas in America, being more individualistic, I find it interesting that it veers towards more, okay, you know, collectively what went wrong to allow this to happen. I think that contrast is interesting, right? I think it has to do with like the pali-pali culture, maybe. Like people want a very simple, quick solution to things, right? Like rethinking about the system and everything is a very difficult, complicated thing that it might be very difficult for the public to follow. But like blaming someone and seeing them go to jail is like, it's a very quick, simple solution. And I think people sometimes just want that, which I don't think is a good thing.
But wouldn't you imagine as a country where most things are, let's say, more consensus driven or collectivist, you would understand that when something like this happens, it can't be one individual to blame, right? It's like the collective system, structure, all the people involved, all the people who achieved consensus on this allowed it to happen in a sense. Is that true, or?
This is the thing. I think the Korean mindset in general and the history of how we came to like this economic state wasn't really through a very rigid system. And I think Korean people in general in their psyche, they're very not good with establishing systems. And I witnessed this a lot in the workplace too. They wanted like a very simple solution that you can see results very quickly, rather than coming up with like a very delicate system that can operate this in a bigger scale. And I think Korean people are a little weak in that area.
I thought you were going to draw a different parallel, which is historically in Korea, whether it's as a country or in individual businesses, it is more top-down, right? And I think when there's a collectivist society or collectivist culture, ultimately the only way things happen or move forward is maybe one individual sending a mandate, you know, whether it's a dictator running the country,
Yeah.
whether it's the CEO of a business. But yeah, really, maybe that's interesting. Collective societies just do require that one person at the top making top-down decisions. Otherwise, no decision will ever be made, and nothing will move forward.
Yeah.
So maybe that's what results in Koreans wanting to find, okay, who was the individual that made this top-down decision happen? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a very good observation.
June, I think a lot of foreigners or Westerners, let's say, immediately when they heard of Jeju Air, they go back to the very famous anecdote, maybe unfairly famous now. You know, Malcolm Gladwell published this in one of his books, and it was around kind of Korea in the earlier days of aviation. You know, with the rigid hierarchy.
Oh, yes.
It's like the senior pilot and the junior pilot.
Yeah.
You know, the junior pilot couldn't actually directly tell the senior pilot what he felt. And ultimately that resulted in, you know, airline crashes and tragedies at a much higher rate than others. For the record, I think I just want to be clear. I don't think that played a part at all in this.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But that's what I think what will immediately come to mind for a lot of people when they hear of any Korean aviation tragedy or disaster. Oh, did that hierarchy come into play again?
I don't really know anything about aviation like systems and how that works. The reason why I think it could be a little bit exaggerated is because how militaries operate their air force. Militaries are like in their nature supposed to be very hierarchical, and how do they work, right? So I don't know if that could be a very direct cause.
Oh yeah. I think it's a bit overly sensationalized and cited.
Yeah.
But that's the danger of Malcolm Gladwell. He like takes something, a kernel of truth, which there is hierarchy, and in Korea, of course.
Yeah.
And you do have to speak very indirectly if you're lower ranking, right? And like, you know, takes it to this extreme conclusion. I would say generally there's some truth to whatever he says, but it's maybe over exaggerated, like you said.
Yeah.
And in this case, I think there's been no evidence that played a role. So I just want to clarify that.
Yeah.
The other interesting thing is the last 4 minutes of the black box footage, I think, is
that part was
missing.
very strange, isn't it?
Suspicious, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know how Koreans are taking this, but it's With most things, I'm just like, oh, how convenient.
Yeah.
Right? Is it a cover up, etc.? Is that your very first kind of?
I'm usually not the person to be very into like conspiracy theories, but like the last 4 minutes, right? And that's like the very reason why you install a black box to get every footage even before the crash happens. And it's very difficult to believe. Yeah. But I don't know why, if there's a reason.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you know where the investigation's at, or are they still trying to investigate, or is it pretty much like we found out all we could and we're moving on?
I'm sure it's going on, but it's not very heavily covered by the media because of like the political situation.
Okay. All right. Okay. So, June, let's move on to two prominent U.S. news headlines, because I want to get your reactions to this and you know, see what the parallels and contrasts are to Korea. So the first one is, have you heard of Luigi Mangione?
I know who you're talking about. I think Korean people know the incident, but they
wouldn't know the name.
Yeah,
I see.
Is he Luigi Mangione or Luigi Mangione?
Oh, you're probably right. Mangione sounds right.
Yeah, because there's Chuck Mangione.
Oh, is there a famous Mangione?
Yeah.
Who's Chuck Mangione? Never heard of this guy. Oh, he's an American flugelhorn player.
But
trumpeter and composer.
He has he has this one very famous song that I promise you, if you listen to it, you would recognize it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I had never heard of Chuck Mangione before, but I think you're right, Luigi Mangione. And you know what's interesting in general? Because I basically just read my news these days, I don't watch anything.
Yeah.
I don't know how names are pronounced. I don't know anything related to that.
Yeah.
Which I don't think it's uncommon. I think a lot of people just consume their news through reading these days. So anyway, so for those of you who don't know, Luigi Mangione is a 26-year-old Italian-American from Maryland.
Oh, from your home country.
From my home state.
Home state.
So he was arrested on the charges of murdering Brian Thompson, the CEO of United Healthcare, which is one of the major healthcare companies in the U.S., outside of his Manhattan hotel.
Yeah.
He allegedly did this using a 3D printed ghost gun with a silencer. Yeah, so he This was on December 4th, 2024.
What's a ghost gun? Sorry.
I don't know.
Okay.
Untraceable. Very quickly, I think some news came out around on the 3 bullets that were used by him to kill Brian Thompson. Again, all alleged. Were the words deny, depose, delay. Maybe the ordering is wrong, but again, these are these are 3 words from the title of a famous book about the healthcare industry overall and kind of what's wrong with it. So when he was he was arrested on December 9th, so this is 5 days later, at a McDonald's. He was carrying a gun, passport, fake IDs, I think $10,000 in cash, but also a manifesto, which talks a lot about everything that is kind of wrong with the healthcare industry. And so I think interesting things that play a role here. I think he is, very kind of fit and good looking. He's from a pretty wealthy background. I think his parents...
He's from like an Ivy League school, right?
He went to an Ivy League college, kind of very upper class America, which you wouldn't think something like this, right, would happen from that type of person. So I think because of these things, it really became this crazy national headline, right? Kind of point blank in the middle of Manhattan, one of the most wealthy and powerful men in America got killed, kind of cold-blooded murder.
Yeah.
And then finding out that the killer was actually very educated, upper-class American too.
Yeah.
It's just quite a shocking story, right? So I think in the immediate aftermath, a lot of people still probably are celebrating this. The reason being, it's the healthcare system in America is so messed up, which we'll talk about just a bit.
Yeah.
And he's kind of being heralded as this cult hero, maybe kind of like a Batman type person, which is like, hey, vigilante justice. We need to change the healthcare industry. And even though this one man had to die because of the policies of his company, et cetera, tens of thousands of Americans are probably being denied healthcare coverage every single year, day, et cetera. So, so many Americans are suffering because, and dying, quite frankly, because they're not able to get their health needs covered by insurance. So, maybe this is actually kind of a good thing in the long run.
Yeah.
But I think by and large, most people would say, okay, it is really tragic that he was murdered. He had a family. He was actually just doing his job in a sense, right? Which is to make his company money. And so that's, sorry, I don't know if I'm getting too deep into it. That's kind of where I fall though, which is any person in this person's job or role would have done very similar things, right? It's really what's to blame here is the overall system, right? How can healthcare companies be for profit? How can they be making so much money? Right? Why isn't there any government legislation, let's say, curbing how much profit they can make? Maybe healthcare companies, I think this is true in certain European countries I read, they are by definition nonprofit, right? And so, I think basically this struck a nerve in America, and this overall, how much citizens and individuals hate the healthcare companies, how the healthcare industry overall and this middleman between, people, individuals, and the healthcare providers, hospitals, et cetera, doctors, they're just making so much money, right? And it's just struck a chord, and it kind of reached a breaking point, I think, where, he's really, a lot of people empathize and actually support, maybe not support his murder per se. He is being vilified too much, I think. But they just recognize something needs to change. And if this is the catalyst that causes that to happen, then, that's actually a good thing.
Yeah.
So just to finish up the timeline, June, December 23rd. So, roughly 2.5 weeks after, he was arraigned in court in Manhattan. He was extradited out of Pennsylvania. He's being charged in New York on 11 counts, I believe, including terrorism, which is one thing I want to get to. And the next court date, I believe, is set for late February, so 2 months after, but that has not happened yet. So, I don't know. Did this news reach you, and do you have any initial thoughts?
It did reach the Korean news. I don't think it was covered very heavily. Okay, to be honest, like if one of these things happens, it's just for a Korean person, it just feels like, one of those things that happen in America, like gun shoots, gun violence, and
interesting.
But we don't really associate it with like the overall healthcare system. We know that like we know that the healthcare system in America is a hot topic. It's kind of messed up.
Yeah.
But because we don't experience it firsthand, we're like pretty indifferent with it. So there must be something wrong with the healthcare system. And I think Korean people only know like what happened as like the incident itself, and we don't really care about the aftermath and what like the discourse that's going on after that. Yeah.
Interesting. So definitely I will say, if you grow up in one country's healthcare system versus the other country's alternative way of thinking about healthcare and the practicality of how much it costs, what does it cover, etc.
Yeah.
It's just incomprehensible, I think, both ways.
Yeah.
Right? Like people always bring up the example in Korea, it's like, oh, if you're a foreigner, you have to get medicine.
Yeah.
The pharmacist or doctor is going to apologize profusely. Sorry, you're not covered. Medicine's going to be so expensive. It's $20.
Yeah.
Right? And Americans laugh at it.
Yeah.
Because for us, it's $20 after insurance covers it.
Yeah.
Without insurance, that medicine would have been $200, right? So it's just both ways I've already talked about how affordable our healthcare coverage is in Korea for our family of 6. And it's just like incomprehensible how cheap it is in Korea.
Yeah.
And so I think like Koreans maybe don't understand just how ridiculous the American healthcare system is. So I agree with that, June. But what about from the class wars, right? The rich versus the poor? Because this was, again, very, very wealthy CEO of a very, not the overall United Healthcare, but one of their subsidiaries, right? So you can think of it as CEO of a chaebol subsidiary in Korea being murdered in broad daylight, downtown Manhattan, so downtown Seoul, right? And it being done by, very kind of well-educated upper class person. Was that, I guess, publicized as a part of this news cycle?
No, not at all. I don't think so.
Yeah, I'm just so curious, like how that kind of news would be taken in Korea, right? And sorry, the one other thing I'll say, I forgot to mention this earlier. In the immediate aftermath, I think over 40%, June, of the younger American population, I forgot the exact, I think 18 to 29-year-old Americans, they were generally supportive of this murder. I mean, that's just crazy to even say, right? That 40% of the young Americans were supportive of this murder because of how crazy I think the healthcare system is, yes, but mostly the class wars thing. It's like, hey, like other immediate aftermath of this, some of the headlines were like, why is there a nationwide manhunt for this one murderer, right? There's hundreds of murders every single day in New York. Most of them don't get found, right? Not nearly at the same level of attention gets put into it.
Yeah.
And of course, people are like, well, it's because someone rich and famous got murdered, right? Once the rich Americans are afraid of their safety or whatever, then something will actually happen. Or things like, oh, the police are really only there to protect the rich and powerful, right? And so, of course, they're going to put extra attention to this case versus like a random, let's say, gang murder or whatever. So, yeah, I think the class thing is what's most interesting to me, and I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
I mean, a couple of questions come to mind. To begin with, we talked about class and stuff like that in our podcast before, but my general understanding of how Americans view class and like the discrepancy and the divide is that they're generally just like acceptive of it, right? That's, I think, how you describe it before. Like they know that it's wrong, but like, what are you gonna do? Kind of.
That's not exactly how I would characterize it.
Like, do you think do American people think it's unfair that Elon Musk has so much money?
Yes, yeah.
And they're angry about it, or they're just like, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, in fact, I think that particular thing, I think in America, billionaires or the very ultra wealthy are very heavily despised.
Yeah.
Whereas in Korea, it seems like they're almost celebrated. Is that not true?
They tend to put them on a pedestal.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's one key difference.
Yeah.
I don't think Americans are indifferent to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, tax the wealthy, billionaires should never exist. It's so messed up. I think that is definitely the prevailing sentiment in America.
I didn't know it was to this extent of people almost like trying to celebrate the murder, kind of. I thought they were just like pretty like, not acceptive is too exaggerated, but like kind of gave up on this.
I think because he was a healthcare CEO, Elon Musk is definitely vilified for other reasons.
Yeah.
But I don't think people can ever say, oh, he's created so much value in the world, right? He's this amazing entrepreneur. I think people recognize that. I think there's other things about his character and personality they don't like.
Yeah.
But it's just the fact, it's interesting. By all accounts, Brian Thompson seemed to be a pretty good person generally, but he's just in this role leading a, very hated and vilified industry, right? Where it's like people are like justifying it from that perspective. So I don't know what the equivalent would be in Korea.
Yeah.
Like, what is an industry or system in place that every Korean kind of hates, but maybe just accepts as a fact? I don't know if there is one, to be honest.
Yeah, if they collectively hate something, they won't accept it in general.
I see. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, there really is no parallel then to healthcare, is there? Gun control is an equally contentious topic in the U.S., but that one is actually, I feel like there's more people both supportive for and against gun control, but healthcare by and large is just hated by everyone.
Yeah. What is with the American healthcare system? Why do you think it's so messed up?
Not being an expert here, Jun.
Yeah.
I think in general, it's the perfect example of capitalism and I think, let's say, lobbying and I don't know what's the right word, political interests. So
I see.
I think one, right, in a capitalistic society, the goal of any company is to generate profit. And so if you take that to its logical end and conclusion, of course, right, it's going to start denying more coverage, find loopholes to not cover things, et cetera, right? Because that's going to maximize profit.
Yeah.
Theoretically, that shouldn't be true, Jun, because of, in capitalism, there should be competition. And so if United Healthcare is not covering, well, there's 3 other healthcare providers that you can go to that are better.
Yeah.
At least that's how it should work in theory. The problem here, Jun, is these companies also heavily lobby. And again, even for Americans, I think this idea is, how can this still exist? But they essentially back the political candidate through money.
Yeah.
And again, there's a lot of evidence to show whoever spends more money in an election gets elected and wins, right? So they're essentially buying the candidate that's going to support them.
I see.
Under the threat of like, hey, if you don't do what is good for us, we're just not going to give you money in the future, right? So I think that whole system, again, if you think about it, seems crazy. That's not a functioning democracy, right? I think the other interesting thing here is, I don't know exactly the root causes of this. Typically, I think most people in the US know you can't have good, affordable, and good coverage healthcare unless you're getting it through your employer. And then your employer also pays a lot of money, right? And so the idea that your healthcare is tied to employment is, it's just a fact of life in America. I think people kind of like, oh, this sucks, but they've never known anything different, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that also is very foreign for a Korean to think about, because
is there a national healthcare system? Period.
I think that is what Obamacare or what Obama passed.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it was actually repealed by Trump.
Yeah.
And then repassed by Biden.
Yeah.
To be honest, I don't know. But that's why Obamacare, when under Obama's presidency, kind of a really big deal. I do think it then got transferred to the states to actually execute, right? Which I want to get into a bit in the next topic as well. But yeah, at least theoretically, there should have been something. But before that, I don't think there was. Yeah.
Interesting. I mean, from a Korean person who briefly lived in the States, again, one funny anecdote, when I was like leaving for America for my graduate studies, one thing that my parents like kept on saying before I left is that whenever you're sick, don't go to the hospital.
Yeah.
It's just fly back to Korea.
Sadly
and then
true.
Another funny anecdote is, even within the yuaksings, there was a saying that like, even when you're in an emergency, never ride an ambulance. Just walk to the hospital.
It's wild, right?
Yeah.
In the most wealthiest, most advanced country in the world,
Yeah.
you can't take an ambulance ride for fear of paying some crazy cost
Yeah.
for the ambulance. It's
Yeah.
nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think because this intermediary of healthcare insurance provider exists, everything funnels through that.
Yeah.
And they, have a vested interest in maintaining more of that control. And so they spend a lot of money in maintaining that position they have. Yeah, this is just how we got to where we are. And it's nonsensical.
I see.
But I think Americans feel that way about so many things. Yeah, which, that's one thing I'll highlight. It's like when generally the country is doing fine and you as an individual are doing fine, you can kind of let these things slide, I feel like. There's no culture of, let's say, demonstrations or protests. Of course, there are examples, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But by and large, I think most people would agree. America's not a country known for its protests and unified protests, right? Compared to like a Korea or let's say a France, right? I think they're known for their protest and demo culture, right?
Speaking of which, I think this brings a interesting contrast of how you depicted as America as the most developed country in the world, but like you also saying that there is no, collective demonstration protest culture. And I think there are two aspects of like how developed the country is. One could be, how economically advanced you are, and the other would be how civilized you are, right?
Yeah.
I think civilization, almost the antonym of civilization would be barbarism. And when you start to justify a very violent act or like trying to solve a social issue through violence, I think that's kind of barbaric. And that is very surprising to me to see in American culture, because we don't usually, like, if you think about America, you don't really differentiate like the wealth and economic status versus like how civilized you are. And to think of, like you said, more than 40% of young people were supportive of this incident.
Yeah.
I think that is kind of barbaric.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
At first, when you said the word barbaric, I was like, America's not barbaric.
Yeah.
That's just my initial reaction. But then when you stop and think about it, kind of is, right?
Yeah.
Like there's guns everywhere. People do shoot each other a lot more.
Yeah.
I think there's probably a lot more fist fights, and in general, like people fight in America. That's interesting. Yeah.
To be clear, I'm not saying the American society as a whole is barbaric, but like trying to solve, not really, but like but there are aspects that shows barbaric characters like this.
Yeah.
I think like this is a very common fantasy of like the grassroots people of like trying to solve something through like
vigilante justice.
Yeah,
for sure.
like the Dark Knight and stuff like that. But if you start to think about it, and the reason why it's a fantasy is because it doesn't work that way in society, and it shouldn't really, because that's a very easy way to solve things. And I think like modern day civilized societies are very intertwined with like multifaceted, issues, and it's very difficult to solve something that way.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It is interesting when you talk about civilization and culture overall.
Yeah.
Because, earlier in this episode, I said, hey, it's easy to forget Korea itself has only been a functioning democracy for like 30 plus years, right? And, but what people always say about the US, and I think, we recognize having lived there, as a country, it's very young.
Yeah.
Right? It's only 250 years old as a country.
Yeah.
So even though for that entire time it's been a democracy, so it's one of the maybe longer lasting democracies in the world, as a nation overall, still quite underdeveloped, maybe as far as culture and, let's say, civilization goes. But it is an interesting contrast, Jun. I think no one would deny America is the richest and most powerful country in the world.
Yeah.
But then I think most people who aren't American would all agree America is one of the least civilized countries in the world, right? With the gun violence and all these other things. Maybe that's an exaggeration. But I think most Americans don't think that way or realize it. Like, when you grow up in this country, you never think, oh, we're uncivilized or uncultured, right? Just like we are who we are, right? But it's always good to have a outside perspective on that.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to make a parallel with is that there was this very famous prison break incident in Korea, circa 1997. And I think most Korean people would know his name. This guy called Shin Chang-won. I don't think you've heard of this. It was a national sensation at the time because he made a jailbreak, prison break. But like he sort of positioned himself as being like this Robin Hood kind of character. Like he stole from the rich people's houses and like gave it to like the poor people.
Yeah, that's a good parallel.
Yeah, and like it was like kind of alarmingly, he was like getting put on a pedestal. So he was on the road for surprisingly 2.5 years.
Oh, he avoided being captured for 2.5 years.
And immediately after he got captured, there were like a lot of like, he was on the press a lot. It's so funny. His t-shirt that he was wearing at the time became so popular. It was all sold out and stuff like that. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because it is a very interesting parallel. And also I think Korea sort of moved on from that phase of like, you know, celebrating a villain or like a criminal. And I think that was like the olden days of Korea. And now if that happens, I don't think anyone would be, not anyone, but I don't think a lot of people would be very supportive of that because it's still a criminal act.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think Korea is at a breaking point though, in the same way of like class wars in general?
Yeah.
Because it feels like, again, Korea is very well, it's very well reported, right? That Korea's youth seems to be very hopeless in a lot of ways, right? Can't get married, have low birth rates, get a job, own a home. Like all of that just seems to be not a given. And it seems like if any country could be on the precipice of like some sort of, I don't know what the right word is. I was going to say revolt, but like it seems like everything is there in Korea for kind of the youth to rise up and kind of celebrate something like this, or really start to institute a class wars, right? Versus the rich, versus the poor, etc. But my sense is that it doesn't feel that prevalent, that overall psyche in Korean society of like, oh, why do the rich have so much? Why do I have so little? Like, we need to do something about it. My sentiment is that most Koreans are like, well, I just gotta work harder and compete harder to get to that place, rather than let's like bring the rich down or like let's equalize things a bit more.
No, there definitely is that kind of sentiment amongst young people, and that's why a lot of I think that's one of the big reasons why some people would support the Democratic Party, because they're more on that stance of like equity and equality of like economic status and stuff like that. But I do think that there is this national history of Korea coming from an even more hopeless state and coming to this place. And so I think there is this mentality of, you know, we can do it, or like I can get to that state, rather than just blaming the system and society a little bit. One very interesting thing is that, so usually if you think about like economic inequality and making justice for that, people, you would think that people would support the more progressive party, right? Surprisingly, I think nowadays, I mean, there's like this gender divide too, which like we won't get into, but the younger generation are more supportive of the Conservative Party.
Interesting, yeah.
Younger male, to be exact. So, yeah, isn't that interesting?
I think American or skeptical perspective on that would be basically the government wants to create a partisan country to actually almost trick the population into focusing on that, right? Democrat versus Republican, etc., rather than focusing on the class divide, which is the real thing that is an injustice, I think. But yeah, I wanted to make the point, actually, and I wanted to get your thoughts on it. I think in Korea, I know you have disagreed with this in the past, but if your basic necessities, let's say, in life, shelter, food, healthcare, medical coverage, if those are provided, in general, like it'll never reach this breaking point where it is, you know, full blown, just like a class war, right? A revolt or whatever.
Yeah.
And I would say in Korea, again, my perspective is that basic social safety net is more prevalent. Whereas in America, right, people are literally in mountains of debt. No one owns their home, right? They can't afford to literally get health care taken care of. And that's why there's such a breaking point. It's like your basic needs aren't being met as a society.
Yeah.
Combined with this just crazy contrast of how rich the wealthy are in America, it's just like so stark. So I don't know if you agree with that, but yeah, it feels like Korea is better at meeting every citizen's kind of basic needs, whereas America is not very good at that. So yeah,
I think in that sense, the U.S. would be probably one of the most extreme societies that don't really put a lot of value in creating that equality state.
The funny thing is, America spends more money than any other country on trying to achieve it. my personal take is just it's done so inefficiently.
Yeah.
And every person's trying to make their own money on the way down. That when it comes to whether it's, welfare programs or
Yeah.
education or anything that you want to provide as a basic necessity,
Yeah.
still everyone in the system is trying to make their own money out of it.
Yeah.
It ends up being very inefficient. So despite spending more money per student on education or
Yeah.
per person on healthcare and medical coverage, everything, it's just still failing, I think,
see.
at it. So in Korea, Jun, is there a big sentiment of like, let's take down the ultra wealthy or like make them pay their fair share in taxes or whatever it might be?
There is, but again, I think there also is a tendency to put them on a pedestal a little bit.
I see.
I don't know why. I think that is very. I think sometimes Korean people view the chaebols as like the modern day monarchy almost, which I think is very interesting and weird.
I think because Korea, again, was a democracy only very recently.
Yeah.
America, from its roots, has always been a democracy, never been a monarchy, anything
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that. So we don't have anything to almost compare them to.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like,
Like the way that they describe the Samsung family is kind of
Yeah.
eerie sometimes. Like, oh, like look at what they're wearing. They're so elegant
I
and
see.
stuff like that. Yeah.
June, one more thing before we move on. So Luigi Mangione is being tried for terrorism charges. We won't get into this too deeply. But anyway, one of the charges also comes, I don't know if it's the terrorism one. One of them comes with the potential for the death penalty. So I just wanted to know, do you know if the death penalty still exists in Korea?
It does.
It does. Okay.
It never gets executed though.
Never gets executed. I think in the US, I don't know exactly. Again, this is one of those state by state things. I do think it still happens, but yeah, more and more infrequently. In general, I don't know if we've talked about this. The American judicial and prison system feels much more severe. I think the sentencing is much harsher than in Korea.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you have feelings about this, but I think at least Americans, when they hear about some of the sentencing, let's say for some Korean crimes, especially around sex offenses, things like that, it seems so light.
Yeah.
But that's just coming from an American perspective. I don't know what your thoughts are on the Korean sentencing and in contrast to America, where you can get like 50 life terms. Like, really?
I think there are definitely public criticism towards how like the law sentencings are so light. Oh, I think most Korean people would agree. I don't know why.
So they want it to be more. Oh, so they want it to be more, let's say, harsh, like in America.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I don't know. Like, I don't know if they want it to be like America, but
just
still,
more harsh in general.
Like for instance, death penalty is only used, I think, in modern day Korean law enforcement to indicate that you can't get a parole.
I see.
Yeah.
And even the max sentencing in general in Korea is at 20 years.
I don't know,
You don't know the
but it
details, okay.
sounds like it sounds right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, just to wrap things up, June, we did want to cover the LA wildfires, which hit very close to home. A lot of my friends are impacted and affected by this. Okay, yeah. So June, I think there are two major fires going on. One is the Palisades fire. The other is the Eaton fires.
Oh, there are two different fires.
Actually, three, but two major ones.
And
there's many.
Did
But
they affect each other, or is this independently happening?
I think they are independent. Like if you look at how far apart they are,
Yeah.
I think they are considered independent fires,
Oh.
but probably caused by a similar root cause, which is
Yeah.
the very high winds.
Yeah.
So yeah, on January 7th, these fires erupted. I think the conditions were very severe droughts and then very strong Santa Ana winds. And so I think very quickly on January 7th, I think it was first reported 10 a.m., 10:20 a.m. And then evacuation warnings were starting to go out as early as 11:44 a.m. So an hour and a half later, people were being told to evacuate, especially in the Palisades area,
Yeah.
Pacific Palisades. And then noon, so an hour and a half later, fully mandatory evacuation orders started to go out. So I think they knew very quickly this is going to be out of control. And later that day, the governor of California declared a state of emergency. It had grown to 1,200 acres at that time. And yeah, basically later, I think the Hearst fire started later that evening. So by that evening of the same day, there were now three separate fire locations kind of going on. I don't know how many details I want to provide, but yeah, just in 2 days later, 17,000 acres had burned in the Palisades fire, 10,000 acres in the Eden fire, and both were considered 0% contained. So literally, it's just growing out of control. They have no way to kind of contain these fires.
For our Korean audience, 500 acres is 2 square kilometers.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're talking about several tens of thousands of acres.
Yeah.
So that would translate to tens of square kilometers.
Yeah.
When you hear that number, does it feel like, oh, that's massive? Or is that like not a big number to you?
That is massive.
Okay, so you're like, that's crazy, like a fire that big in the whole country. Okay. Let me fast forward here because we have day-by-day breakdown. But
just
okay, as of January 17th, the Palisades fire was considered 31% contained. The Eaton fire was 65% contained. I don't know if we have the latest acreage numbers here.
I think a good measurement reference that Korean people usually make for like these very wide areas is how many Yeouidos.
Oh, the district of Yeouido.
Yeah.
Okay.
So one Yeouido is 740 acres.
740. So, okay, let me... this one article, June, is saying the Palisades fire grew to 23,713 acres and was only 50% contained as of Sunday.
Wait, 23,000
acres. Yeah. So how many Yeouidos is that?
41. It's 31 Yeouidos.
So yeah, only one of the fires was, and only at 50% containment. Already, what was that? 31?
31 Yeouidos.
31 Yeouidos.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so as a Korean, when you hear that, you're like,
crazy.
It's unfathomable, right?
Yeah.
And so this is just all straight burn.
That almost might be the equivalent of the
Seoul?
area of Seoul.
I wouldn't be surprised. These fires are, I don't know how big Seoul is, to be honest. But yeah, if you look at a map, the damage is insane. It was even to the point very early on, they had to give a warning against drinking the tap water because some of the water treatment facilities were affected. Right. So just imagine, not only are you being evacuated, have the possibility or very likelihood of your entire house being burnt to the ground. You now have to deal with not being able to drink the local water. Just like, it's kind of just a crazy situation to think of. So unfortunately, wildfires are nothing new. And I will say, like, at least how quickly the evacuation warnings were sent out, etc. You know, if this were our first time as a country or region dealing with this, it might have been even worse.
Yeah.
But wildfires have just been a reality in America for the last, at least let's say California specifically. That's what I'm familiar with for the last decade. So this is nothing new. But just like looking at the pictures, it's insane. I think I was reading that it seems so at least we are on the path towards fully containing both of these major fires. So at least the damage can start to be, assessed and hopefully we can begin the road to recovery. But at least one thing I'm reading is total economic losses from this fire could be over 50 billion.
50 billion.
I don't even know what that would represent as like GDP of Korea, but
50조. Yeah.
Just kind of hard to imagine.
Yeah.
And I think on the one hand, I just have to bring this up because in light of the class wars that I was talking about, generally these were very wealthy areas affected. The average cost of these homes seemed to be in the $3 to $4 million range.
Yeah.
So again, I think there are some people saying like, oh, it was the rich, big deal. And when you look at what happened, like, I don't think anyone can actually say that and actually have like a soul. But ultimately, even if it did affect the wealthy overall, still just so tragic. The other thing I wanted to call out though is, in general, when these kind of tragedies strike, there's always, I don't know if the right word is tension, but there's a question of, okay, what's the state, local response to this, and what is the federal government going to do? And unfortunately, oftentimes that becomes politicized in America, right? It's like the sitting president might withhold aid to a state that isn't aligned with their political party, etc. Whether it was, Hurricane Katrina before. There was flooding in North Carolina and the U.S. recently as well. I forgot the exact storm that caused it, but there was really severe, crazy flooding. And again, just a few months after that, now these wildfires in Southern California. So
California is basically a blue state, right?
Yeah, it's
which
a blue
is
state.
aligned with the current government's.
Yeah, but I think already, like, Trump actually tomorrow, I believe,
Yeah.
is going to be inaugurated.
Mhm.
So I think already, I don't know how much the current government can do here,
Mhm.
but to be clear, I don't know if that's happening, but that always comes up as a talking point. It's like, when such a humanitarian crisis comes up, ideally you'd want the whole country to come together.
Yeah.
But sadly, in the U.S., it often feels like it's always tinged with this sense of like the political side coming through. It's like, oh, well, California had it coming. They deserve this. It's like, how can you actually say that?
Yeah.
At the same time, like, yeah, sorry, I'll just leave it at that. But yeah, I think, where did I want to go with this? Obviously, climate change plays a big part in this. The severe drought-like conditions. I think oftentimes the root causes of these wildfires is outdated infrastructure, which again is just so sad when you think about America as such a wealthy country, just having outdated infrastructure. And
what do you mean by infrastructure, though?
Specifically things like electrical lines and...
Also, you mean that they create sparks?
Yeah, basically outdated infrastructure causing sparks.
That's so scary.
Into a completely drought-like condition, and then the high winds, again, I don't know if those are directly attributable to climate change, but I would be surprised if it was not. And so, yeah, just like all these things are causing these wildfires to happen in California, sadly, very regularly. Obviously not to this extent. This was more severe than before. But yeah, it's just such a big news cycle and affecting people that are, that I know, seeing through social media, etc. Just so many also like GoFundMe. I think what's heartwarming, again, if there is a silver lining, is I think Americans' propensity to really help each other out when something like this happens, even independent of the government. So the amount of like GoFundMe pages I've seen, like highlighting particular individuals and their families and their needs, right? People donating to those. Also sharing resources around here's where you can go to, get groceries, get supplies, have shelter, get water, right? Just like people are sharing as much as they can to help each other.
Yeah.
And then finally, I think just just like individuals I know doing runs and making shipments. Hey, I'm going to the grocery store, or I'm going to this place. Like, I'll bring stuff back for everyone else. Just like the collective, everyone helping each other out. I think opening up homes to each other for people who have lost their homes.
Yeah.
I think that's always the heartwarming aspect of these. But yeah, I don't know if you have any thoughts on how this would compare to Korea if it were to happen here.
If something that would have happened in Korea, I think Korea would have reacted the same way, minus like the political, like federal versus like local government thing, because that's a very uniquely American thing. Of course, there are local governments in Korea, but it's not as independently acting like it is in the U.S. If like something like this would have happened, I think, I don't think the government would think twice to jump in and start helping with the aftermath. Yeah.
What's the closest, I think, comparison or analogy you can make to Korea? Like something really severe happening, like unfolding as you speak. I don't know if it involves evacuations or like a natural disaster, whether weather related. But is there anything that you can think of? I think the tragedies that come to mind when I think about the Korean kind of national tragedies and traumas, they're very isolated one-off incidents.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know if you have any if you can make an analogy to something that's happened in Korea.
Luckily, I don't think Korea had a lot of like natural disaster incidences. That is very interesting. I've never thought about that.
Yeah. It's so surreal because it's actively happening and unfolding.
Yeah.
And it's not like it happened and went away, but it's only getting worse.
Yeah.
Right. And because of social media and because of all these things, like you just see it unfolding and it's surreal. Right.
Yeah.
And it's no end in sight and all this crazy outcomes. I think that always feels a bit unique. Right. Like this thing was going on for over 2 weeks. Right. And every day it's just like, well, how much of it has been contained? And yeah, it almost gets to the point where it's like, if you're not in it, you could forget it's happening. But then social media and the news is reminding you it's happening as we speak. I don't. That part for me always feels a bit different. It's like what can Yeah, it's like, what can you do, right?
Yeah.
It's not over. It's not about finding the root cause or blame. It's just about, okay, let's deal with the immediate needs of the people. Yeah, I don't know. But that I always loved, that just collective spirit in America, like people willing to help each other out when tragedy strikes. I think that's very heartwarming to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, we don't have to spend too much time on this, but just knowing that it's happening and just the extent of it is just really crazy to think about. That I had to mention it. Yeah, June, we did have a article that was a little bit more lighthearted. Specifically, it was talking about some predicted trends in Korea in 2025. But I think that's the perfect thing for us to cover in a later episode.
Our trends episode.
Yeah. So look forward to that.
Yeah.
I think that, anyway, yeah. I didn't realize there was a very well-known book in Korea that comes out every year predicting trends.
Yeah.
But yeah, looking forward to covering that with you in a future episode. Okay, as always, if you'd like to support us and want to see us continue to put out this type of content, one way you can do so is through Patreon. For the minimum tier of $1 a month or 25 cents an episode, you too can get access to our Discord where you can discuss the latest episode, future episode topics, and just anything else related to Korean or American culture with other Patreons as well in our Discord. So since last recording, we have had 4 more Patreon subscribers, supporters. First, we have Lisa. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Lisa.
Lisa's been very active in the Discord as well, which is awesome. We also have Doyan. Thank you, Doyan.
Thank you, Doyan.
Thank you to Young-eun.
Thank you, Young'un.
And thank you to Yuri.
Yuri.
Yeah,
Thank you, Yuri.
Yeah, thank you for your support. Again, it goes a long way to helping us continue to put out this type of content.
Okay, and then another big thanks for our commenter on YouTube with the idea of Chung something that it ends with 1293.
Okay.
Thank you for your super. Thank you very much. We really appreciate your support.
Yeah, we realized somehow that feature got turned off on YouTube. I didn't do it.
Why. I didn't do it either.
YouTube somehow turned off the super feature.
Yeah.
But it's back on. So yeah, you can support us through YouTube as well. And yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you.
It's the end of another episode. So, all right. It was, yeah, definitely sadder news. But
Yeah.
still good to cover it with you, Jun. Okay. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Okay. I think we have to wrap.
Okay. Yeah. I'm completely going to miss my yoga class. Okay.